Welcome, everyone. I am so excited to be here on this. We're in the throes of summer. Isn't it amazing? So if you're going to the farm markets like I am, you're noticing there's a lot more to choose from, which is really, really exciting. So if you haven't had an opportunity, this weekend's supposed to be lovely. A great time to find some local, delicious, nutritious fruit, which just happens to be today's topic, as well as some vegetables so that you can kind of support and eat local, which is, I think, a fantastic way to offer yourself a cancer protective diet. So I am going to get right to work today because we have a great topic. And as always, our participants have submitted some great questions that they keep me on my toes, which I'm so excited to be able to do for you all. So I'm going to share my screen. I have put together the questions and my best attempts to answer those questions in a PowerPoint. And for those of you who registered, of course, you get a copy of this, of the PowerPoint presentation. If you're watching us live on Facebook, thank you for joining us. And I hope to see you at the center soon. All right, so without further ado, this is our July edition of Ask the Dietitian. And we apparently chose a great topic all about fruit and how does fruit have a role in a cancer protective diet. So today I'm going to go over those questions and give you my best answers. I always like to provide some resources so that if you'd like to explore more about the topic, I want to direct you to some reliable and trustworthy websites that I often use in practice. And then, of course, I think it's helpful to include some recipes that will help enhance your cancer protective diet. So those who have registered will also get access to those recipes. Okay, so before we get to the questions, let's talk about fruit in a cancer protective diet, right? That's what we're interested in. So you may already have heard this, but the cancer nutrition experts recommend that anyone diagnosed with a cancer consume a whole food plant-based diet. So fruit is an essential component of a plant-based diet. We can't deny that. And why is that? Well, I'm not going to even list and name all of these compounds, but trust me. Fruit is a package, and all fruit contains different amounts of these special cancer protective compounds, and they work in more ways than one. So we see how, because of the evidence, because of what the experts recommend, we want to include fruit in a cancer protective diet. But I get this question a lot. What about the sugar in fruit? Should we be concerned about that as part of an overall healthful diet? What I want to point out, and we will get into this today with the answers to the questions, that fruit has natural sugars, and these natural sugars are associated with good health. When we eat an entire piece or serving of fruit, we are eating an entire package of not just these natural sugars, but nutrients and fibers. And so the package is really what matters most. There is, from the research, an inverse relationship between eating fruit and the risk for adult weight gain, chronic diseases, including cancer, as well as mortality. Inverse. So the people that eat more seem to have lower risk for all of those things that are listed on the slide there. So please sign me up for more fruit in my diet, right? All right, so let's get to those questions. I have a nectarine there because that's what I'm enjoying for a snack very soon. So let's go through those questions. Which fruits are more likely to raise blood sugar levels quickly? Which ones are less likely to do this? What fruits are best in a smoothie for cancer prevention? What is the best fruit for heart and kidney issues? And can we eat too much fruit? Great questions so far. What fruit are good if on chemo that can cause diarrhea? Are there specific fruits that are better or worse to prevent cancer or help in the treatment of cancer? I eat at least two to four servings a day, sometimes more. Is that too much? I'm making a fruit smoothie in the morning with greens, and it really helps me in my quest to eat more fruit and vegetables, but I'm worried that it's spiking my blood sugar. What do you think of this practice? More great questions. Last two. What are the best fruits with less sugar or carbs for our diet? And what are the best fruits for someone with RCC, that's renal cancer, cell cancer or kidney cancer, that happens to be metastatic to the bones? Wow, great questions. Okay, so let's start with that first question. What about fruit, and what about the natural sugars it contains, and how does that affect our blood sugar response? Wow, I could probably talk about this for an entire Ask the Dietitian series. probably for an hour or more. So let's go through what the natural sugars of fruit are. They are basically two, fructose and glucose, and all sugars have some combination of those two natural sugars. But I want you to keep in mind what I pointed out at the start, that fruit is a package. So we get more than just these natural sugars contained in a whole fruit. The fiber in whole fruit alters the amount of digestible natural sugars that are left over. And we refer to this as glycemic load. So some of you may be familiar with the term glycemic index. Well, we don't really rely on that. That's not accurate information. Glycemic load is more helpful because what glycemic load uses is the amount of fiber that's in fruit and the serving size that we typically eat. And what we find is that for fruit, and most every single fruit has a low glycemic load. So you might see it's high on the glycemic index, but that's an unreliable tool. We want to use glycemic load. And I can probably do an Ask the Dietitian on glycemic load as well. But it's relatively low for fruit, thank goodness. And that's all thanks to the fiber as well as the acid that most fruit contains. And that helps to kind of slow down digestion. So that means it's going to release slowly into our bloodstream, those natural sugars. If also we want to keep in mind, if we eat anything else besides just fruit, like I often very much will partner nuts or seeds or nut butters with my fruit, that's going to impact our blood sugar response as well. It's actually going to, in a beneficial way, because the peanut butter, for example, has protein and or fats, and that's going to slow down our blood sugar response. So we want to keep that in mind, and we're putting things in perspective here. So really, how do we enjoy fruit while maintaining acceptable blood sugar levels? I think I would first and foremost just say, try to eat the whole fruit, including the skin. We know that that alone has a low glycemic load, so we don't have to worry necessarily about our blood sugar response. However, there is a caveat. If you have a condition such as prediabetes or diabetes, you probably want to pay attention and be mindful of portion size, especially for dried fruit, because it's a smaller package, so we tend to eat more of it. So it's having an extra large portion, right? So it's going to add some more and more natural sugars, which again are beneficial for our health. But if we have conditions where we don't metabolize those natural sugars as best as we can, we may want to modulate how much of them we're eating, right? But we still get to enjoy them. That's the good news. I would advise someone with prediabetes or diabetes to limit their fruit juice intake. Why is that? Well, fruit juice lacks fiber, and we tend to drink fruit juice rather quickly. So we're likely to overconsume it and overconsume it quickly. So that's going to alter our blood sugar response as well. And then hopefully, I think my audience probably knows this, but fresh and frozen fruit are preferred over canned fruit. That's especially canned in sugary syrups, right? Because that's going to add more sugar, and that's going to definitely impact our blood sugar levels. All right, moving on to the next question. What fruits are best in a smoothie for cancer prevention? I want to just first talk about smoothies. Smoothies are super helpful in a way that they can offer you the addition of cancer protective foods, such as fruit or vegetables that we otherwise might not consume. But because we're drinking it in a smoothie, we get it into our body. So we'll take it, right? Now, ideally, I would say smoothies should be strategic, right? To offer the most nutrition and a balance of macronutrients. So not only carbohydrates, which are what are in fruits, but also protein and fats. So I also challenge many people I work with to think about a veggie focused smoothie. Can you do that? Right? So a lot of smoothies are fruit based and they might not contain vegetables. And that's a missed opportunity in my opinion. And I would also say, try to skip added sugars in a smoothie. Like maybe you're adding some agave or honey, for example. I would say, try to rely on your whole fruit for the sweetness, right? Especially frozen fruit can help with that. And then you don't have to add the extra sugars. So which fruits, so let's get back to this question. Which fruits are best in a smoothie? I would say all of them, truly. So I would try to use the whole fruit and include the peel, right? Because that's where the majority of the fiber is. That's going to help control our blood sugar response. And I would think about adding the fruit that you otherwise wouldn't eat. And these are just some examples, like maybe frozen wild blueberries or some pomegranate seeds or even other berries that you might not otherwise eat. I put that on the list because I find I often get whole fruit, not like berries. Like I grabbed a nectarine today. You know, I wouldn't necessarily grab a bunch of raspberries or blueberries. I'm missing out, I know. But in a day like today, throw them in a smoothie. That would be a great opportunity to still enjoy them. So the bottom line about these cancer protective smoothies that have fruit in them, think about balancing those macronutrients, right? So not only the fruit, but including a protein and a fat source, as well as some vegetables if you can. And then think about variety in your smoothies. This is the best way I can answer this question. So we use this expression, eat the rainbow, and that really is what we refer to when we're talking about eating a variety of fruit and vegetables. So when we eat different colored fruit and vegetables, and we definitely could do that with a fruit smoothie, right? Then we're going to really achieve this optimal dose of different compounds, of different vitamins and minerals. And I think that's really the ideal way to approach your smoothie and adding some fruits very intentionally. So could it be a red day, or a blue day? And you get to really reap the benefits then of adding all of these great fruit choices into your smoothie. Okay, next question. What is best for kidney and heart issues? What fruit is best for those? So we'll start first with kidney health. And this was a study that was published in the American Journal of Nephrology by the Center for Disease Control. They found in this research study that people that ate low amounts of fruit and vegetables, they had a higher risk of kidney failure in those that had a pre-existing kidney issue and those without it. So an inverse relationship, right? So these findings suggest eating more is beneficial. The study's findings were consistent with other studies that a plant-based diet, cancer protective and also kidney protective, can help prevent kidney failure or end-stage kidney disease. Now, they didn't discuss which fruit or which vegetables. They said all of them. Okay, so that's what we know. That's what we understand about protecting our kidneys. They're all great. Now, depending on the extent of your kidney disease, sometimes a restriction, not avoiding it, but a restriction of potassium may be advised. So I would check with your physician and your healthcare provider. Do you need to watch your potassium in your food choices? By the way, most of us are not eating, we're already eating a low potassium diet. So we could actually benefit from eating more potassium. So I just want to share that. Okay. I wouldn't worry about eating too much potassium unless you're told to. Now, what about our heart health concerns and what fruit is best for that? Well, we also have similar information. They have done research and they have found that people that are eating more fruit and vegetables, they have lower risk for cardiovascular disease, right? That inverse relationship exists there. Now, why is that? Many fruit are rich in vitamin C as well as beta carotene. And those two compounds work like antioxidants. So they help to slow down or prevent atherosclerosis by reducing the buildup of plaque from cholesterol and other substances in the arteries. Antioxidants are also cancer protective. So we get it's like a knockout punch here, 1-2, right? We're getting so much when we're eating fruit. Fruit is also high in potassium. So this is helpful for heart health because it helps to control blood pressure. Did you know this? So what happens when we eat potassium, it lessens the effects of sodium when we're eating a lot of sodium in our diet. So the more potassium we eat, the more sodium we lose through our urine. Potassium also has been shown to ease tension in our blood vessel walls. So that helps to further control blood pressure. So which fruit is best for heart and kidney health? Guess what? All of them, all of them. And that's what the research suggests. So I would, again, think about including that variety and eating the rainbow, right? Because then you can saturate your body with the compounds that we know to be important for heart health, as well as cardiovascular health, as well as kidney health, but also cancer protective. We know that fiber can do that. We know that orange and red colored fruit and vegetables contain carotenoids, and potassium is found in a lot of different fruit and vegetables. I listed actually the top 6 there, or top 5, sorry. When you get this presentation, if you registered for it, I'm including this link so you can look up all the amounts of potassium in the fruit and vegetables that you want. And you can kind of total to see how much you're enjoying every day. All right, next question. We're moving along. Can you eat too much fruit? Are there specific fruits that are better or worse to prevent cancer or help in the treatment? I eat 2 to 4 servings a day, sometimes more. Is that too much? Let's answer that question. How much is too much? The amount of fruit we eat every day actually the recommendations depend on several variables: our age, our gender, our height, our weight, and our physical activity levels. So this amount takes basically into consideration how many calories we eat, right? How many calories we require for optimal wellness. And then fruit is a percentage of the carbohydrates. as a percentage of the calories. And that's really how we break it down. But for most adults, the recommendation is about 2 to 3 servings per day. So what does that look like? That's about 8 large strawberries, a medium pear, a cup of cut fruit like pineapple. Each of those constitutes a serving. Can we eat too much fruit? I think this is a great question. So I want to quiz you. Now the dietitian's going to ask a question. So in the state of Illinois, if you were to guess, what percentage of men and what percentage of women eat the recommended amount of fruit? Let's start with men first. 11.1%. So this is the most recent data. So we are failing miserably in eating the recommended amount of fruit. Women are just a smidge better at 16.9%. So we have a lot of work to do. We can all probably eat more fruit, and we shouldn't necessarily worry about eating too much fruit. But technically, we can eat too much of anything we eat, right? So sometimes eating too much of something might mean we're eating too little of something else. And so could that lead to a deficiency? I think that's an interesting thought. And sometimes people do complain, if I have too much fruit, I actually have some digestive issues. So if that's you, then okay, good to know. And maybe we want to control the amount of fruit we're having. If that's not the case for you, then I say we don't need to necessarily worry, right? I think those are the two things to ask yourself. Now, just a little segue here. Have you heard about the Fruitarian Diet? Let me introduce you to it. So it's a subtype of a vegan diet, and fruitarians eat 80-10-10. So 80% raw fruit. That's a lot of fruit. 10% protein and 10% fat. Most of the protein comes from nuts and seeds. Most of the fat comes from things like coconut, olives, and avocado. There are risks for nutrient deficiencies, as you can imagine, in protein, vitamin B12, vitamin D, calcium, iron, and zinc. I also wonder about a fruitarian diet that it would be very isolating socially. I don't know how you could dine out or enjoy food at maybe a family or friends and be strict as this is. But I'm sharing this information because there is a gentleman by the name of Michael Arnstein, and he is, that's an image of him there. He is an accomplished marathoner and also a fruitarian. He calls himself the Fruitarian. And he ran the 2010 Boston Marathon as a fruitarian. And guess what his time was? He finished the Boston Marathon in 2 hours and 28 minutes. So he ran a pace of 5 minutes and 40 seconds per mile for 26.2 miles. So he's a fruitarian and obviously capable, right? And in great physical shape. So we see how, and actually I'm going to break this down further. He consumes 30 pounds of fruit every day. And here is this accomplished marathoner. So I don't know if it's possible to eat too much fruit. However, I think a fruitarian diet isn't really the best choice for everybody. I would definitely caution against this if you are on active cancer treatment because of the risk for nutrient deficiencies. And I would encourage anyone who is considering pursuing a fruitarian diet or even a vegan diet for that matter to work with a dietitian, because I think there are some concerns that you would want to be addressed to make sure that really your diet is optimal. So I hope you found that interesting, because I think it is. 30 pounds of fruit. Woof. Okay, so can you eat too much? So really what the experts say is that really 2 to 4 servings, they're not excessive and they contribute to a healthful diet. If you are someone who has prediabetes or diabetes, you may want to control that amount and maybe limit to 2 to 3 servings, as I described earlier. I would say to take inventory. So if you're concerned you're eating too much fruit, does that mean you're not eating enough of other things? Like, for example, vegetables. Are you eating too much and not eating enough vegetables? Because then we want to make sure you're really balancing and achieving the optimal nutrient intake for your wellness. What we do know from research is that people that eat up to 10 servings of fruit, they don't have any digestive issues. Some people do. So again, if that's what you are experiencing, then that would be a reason to limit fruit. Other than that, I wouldn't worry about it. Now, you may have heard of this campaign called 5 a Day, and it's It's been a campaign now for several decades, and that's because of the research showing that 5 servings of fruit and vegetables per day are associated with maximum health and wellness. Now, there's evolving research, as that's the case with nutrition, right? And so some experts are arguing that 5 a day might not be enough. And they're arguing that 5 a day of each, so 5 servings of fruit, 5 servings of vegetable for 10 a day might be more closely aligned with the ideal amounts of fruit and vegetables that we should eat every day. So that's food for thought. Okay. So I think that 5 servings a day, I think that I hope to give you some confidence that that's not overdoing it. Okay. So I'm just keeping an eye on the time, and I think we're going to go a little past. Okay. So I'm going to move through the last few questions rather quickly. Okay. So which fruit is a good choice if you're on a chemo that may cause diarrhea? So did you know that there is a special fiber found in some fruit that can help if you are struggling with diarrhea? And that fiber is called soluble, or what we also call as viscous fiber. And it slows down the pace or the speed at which food travels through our digestive tract. That's good if we have diarrhea, right? And it also adds bulk to a loose stool. So we'll firm up a loose stool. Also good if we have diarrhea. So this special fiber is found in the fruit that's listed: bananas, applesauce, papaya, and melon. And so individuals I work with, I often encourage them to incorporate these soluble fibers in almost every meal and snack that they eat per day, because that's going to help manage that diarrhea. Just as an aside, there are other sources of soluble fiber besides fruit. So things like oats or cooked carrots, cooked green beans, and as well as mashed potatoes. So incorporating those foods definitely will be helpful to give some great nutrition found in those foods, but also help control that diarrhea. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that I think if you find your diarrhea is not well managed, I would encourage you to discuss this with your treatment team and to see if you need more, like a review of your prescription or over-the-counter products that you might be using to help with your diarrhea. Chances are there might be a solution to be found there. All right, we're going to move on to the next few questions. Making a fruit smoothie in the morning with those greens. I'm worried, is this spiking my blood sugar? What do I think of this practice? So as I mentioned earlier, I think that smoothies are a great option because it would include ingredients, just like this question is stating, that I otherwise wouldn't really eat. It's a way to get those cancer-fighting foods in my diet. So here's what's known to be more likely to raise our blood sugars. If we only use fruits and vegetables in those smoothies, if we're using fruit juice in those smoothies, and if we're adding sugars, simple sugars like honey, agave, that's going to be more associated with raising blood sugar after drinking a smoothie with those ingredients. However, we can control our blood sugar better if we think about the following things in making a smoothie. If we add that protein or fat source, like I described earlier, so I'm going to give you an example in the next slide, and then using whole fruit, and maybe using only 1 whole fruit or 1.5 servings of whole fruit, because you're going to do an inventory of how much fruit you eat a day. And maybe you only use fruit in a smoothie, so maybe you want to have half a smoothie in the morning and half a smoothie later. Just a thought. Those are ways to make sure that you're controlling your blood sugars. So this sensible smoothie would include a fiber source, so the whole fruit instead of the juice, would include a protein and a fat source, so things like Greek yogurt or silken tofu. What a novel idea. Things like white beans blend very nicely into smoothies and give you more fiber, more cancer-fighting compounds, and some protein. And then some fat sources that are associated with great nutrition as well. I would encourage you, and this is sort of an afterthought for many people, sip your smoothie slowly. So when we eat and drink food, the faster we eat and the faster it enters our system, right? And the faster it enters our digestive tract, the faster it goes into our bloodstream. So sip that smoothie slowly. I would encourage that. Second to last question, what are the best fruits with less sugar and less carbs for our diet? So carbs, are they still the enemy? Do I have to do a whole presentation on carbs? I saw this t-shirt the other day and I wanted to share it. If loving and eating carbs is wrong, I don't want to be right. So the majority of us are concerned about carbs because they just have this reputation right now, but it's so important that we make this distinction between the types of carbs that we eat. And there absolutely are quality carbohydrates, especially fruit, that are associated with health, associated with cancer protection, and even weight management, and even blood sugar control. So we don't necessarily have to fear the carbohydrates that are found, especially in something like fruit. When we eat fruit, remember, we don't only eat those natural sugars that it contains. It's this package. So the package alters our blood sugar response in really good ways. So the fiber, remember, keep that in mind. That's going to slow down how quickly we digest and metabolize those natural sugars. And the amount of carbs per fruit. So a lot of people ask me this, this is going back to the question, which fruit has lower amounts of carbs? Really, when you look at like a serving size guide or a portion size guide, all fruit is divided into how many carbohydrates it contains per serving. So you might get away with having something like half of a grapefruit, but you might, for the equivalent, get the same amount of carbohydrates in an orange. And maybe you want to have, a whole grapefruit will give you, I explained that wrong, sorry. So you can eat a whole grapefruit for the amount that's in an orange. So if you really have a hearty appetite, you want a big serving, go for the grapefruit if you can, if it doesn't interact with prescriptions, because there's a lower amount per serving, right? So hopefully that's helpful for you. But I want to really kind of get to the bottom of this. I don't want you to be worried about the carbohydrates in fruit. So generally a serving of fruit is the following: a piece of small fruit, a cup of cut up fruit, 1 to 2 slices of a large fruit like melon, and then a tablespoon of dried fruit. So that's eye-opening for some people because that's a small portion, a tablespoon. So you could technically kind of overconsume dried fruit because it's such a small portion in a tablespoon. Most of us are advised to have 2 to 4 per day of those serving sizes, and we are guaranteed to have good health. It's a guarantee at this point. All fruit will help in controlling our blood sugars, support our immune function, reduce inflammation, and help manage weight. I don't want you to worry about which fruit has more or less carbohydrates, because remember glycemic load, and all fruit has a relatively low glycemic load. Okay, hopefully we put that question confidently to bed. All right, last question. What are the best fruits for someone with renal cancer who has mets to the bones? I think this is a great question. I wish I had a better answer than this, but what I do want to point out, I think what comes to my mind is that a fruit that's high in potassium may benefit if you're noticing you have high blood pressure. And so it may also help normalize blood levels of potassium. So if you're low or high, I think we want to be cognizant of how much potassium we're eating, and that's where a dietitian can help. But here's a list of some high potassium containing fruits. You might enjoy them. They're delicious. So fruit may also benefit not only our kidneys, because they buffer the acids that we are naturally producing in our body or that we're eating. And these acids can sometimes pull calcium from our bones. So it's like a 2-for-1 again, where these high potassium fruit can help the kidneys in buffering the amount of acid that's in our body and help protect our bones, because we're not taking calcium out of the bones to buffer all these extra acids. Hopefully that is explained in a way that makes sense. I would say, bottom line, enjoy this variety. Even though I focus on these high potassium fruit, all fruit really are great for all reasons. Hopefully you're getting that today from me. So what are the best fruits? All of them. We don't know of any specific fruits that have been researched to show that they directly impact renal cancer as well as bone mets. But a variety of fruit can, in part of an overall nourishing diet, can definitely saturate our body with these cancer protective compounds. And this goes for everyone in the audience. Here's what we know about fruit. It contains these compounds called phytochemicals. And what you'll notice on the right of that image are all the ways that phytochemicals have been shown to be helpful in cancer protection. So all fruits contain all different amounts of phytochemicals. There's not one that's better than the other. Okay, so I want you to explore new to you fruits and try to eat a variety. And I think that's the best answer I can give for basically the majority of these questions today. So here are some of my favorite resources as it relates to fruits and also vegetables. There's a great foundation. It's a nonprofit called Produce for Better Health Foundation, and they have this campaign called Have a Plant. The American Institute for Cancer Research, you might enjoy this link. I share this very often with people I work with. They have a section on their website called Foods That Fight, and they list specific foods, plant foods, as it so is. And some of those plant foods have some of the fruits that I've talked about today. So you can see further how they're cancer protective. And then sugars seem to come up a lot, especially as we talk about a cancer protective diet. So I wanted to also include this link, and it's actually based out of New Zealand and Australia, but I think it's really, really an interesting website with a lot of helpful content to clarify a lot of the myths around sugar in fruit and to help you feel more confident that you're choosing the best choices for yourself. So I'm going to share some recipes for those of you who registered. As I mentioned, I thought it would be appropriate to share a smoothie because some questions were asked about smoothies. I love to think of fruit as being a savory combination as well. So a nice Mediterranean salad. And then I love grilling fruit this time of year. It helps to create this super sweet end result, and it's great. And then grapesicles, if you've never heard of them, frozen grapes. You're welcome. They are such a treat. Any frozen fruit is great, but also frozen grapes are such a treat this time of year. So our next Ask the Dietitian is currently scheduled for Friday, August 4th at our usual time. And our topic, we think this is going to be another popular one, is food for digestive health. So if you're interested to ask a question, please register and attend that program. Thank you so much. We're going to end our share there.